Amazing, it wasn't burning then. So. I know Oregon's had a tough time. I got family in Beaverton, just outside of Portland. So.
Hi, baby.
Okay, so
we're in Nashville.
The 5 T's. It's interesting how you'll see this connection with in our architecture and the connection to our buildings with that dread disease. Okay, we're on Native American land, as in most of us. There were Native Americans here before we were. The Cherokee Indians were millennia old. They're old as the Aztecs, the Romans. Nobody can really quite compare to how long they were here. The white settlers started coming in the late 1700s, and they kind of that was kind of the impetus to them getting pushed to the side. And in 1838, you know what happened? The Trail of Tears. So they went to Oklahoma. So.
Bob?
Yes.
I have a question.
Fire.
Am I allowed to put the window up?
Yes, you are.
I am?
Yes,
okay.
you are. Yeah. I call this is like bipolar weather. You'll see,
okay.
you know, you go from cool to warm.
Okay.
Do these roll up anymore?
Pardon me?
Do these roll up anymore?
They do, but I'm afraid we're going to get rained on today. Let's go about halfway through up around the Norwood Park Inn.
Gus was trying to get.
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. Well, let's see if we
It
can.
has to go up halfway to stay on the.
Yes, ma'am. You heard it clear.
Okay.
Okay, so but Asheville fell in we had an unprecedented growth. 1880 was where we were a sleepy mountain town of just a few thousand people, but in 1880 the railroads came from the east, and that changed everything. People started coming here, and we had a 50-year unprecedented growth until 1929. Everybody knows what happened in 29. We entered the Depression. We took a great deal of hit. But all of these houses you see, every one of them were, 99% of them were before 1929. So, but this was a very distressed place. My wife was lived in one street over when we met and married in 1971. Her family moved to Los Angeles the same year that my wife and I married. Their house sold for $10,000.
Oh boy.
This is boarded up at prostitution, drugs, this whole area right here. Now the house today is worth $230,000, and it's an old house, and it's not in great shape. So that said, this whole area in the 70s was boarded up. Like I say, it was a rough place. This was getting ready to be a parking lot. This was the first house that was saved. This is the Gudger home. In 1978, we came to our senses, and we realized that we can't let this go. And this was getting ready to be torn down, 1900, a Queen Anne Victorian style, and we almost lost the handle on it. But we didn't. In 1978, we became a historic district, and the rest is history, because we started creating a preservation movement. Now historic register, as I said, and we're now we're very careful. We're very careful with our architecture. So as we go down the street, you'll see that you've probably never been to a place that's more diverse. There must be a law in Asheville that says no two houses alike. And I'll soon describe that wall of that building there. It's made out of a product called Pebble Dash. Anybody ever heard of it? That's an English. Anybody heard? That's an English thing, and I'll explain English, Pebble Dash, Vanderbilt, architect, and tuberculosis. All kind of connects. So you see these old homes. Most of these homes, you've got those in your older neighborhoods. These brick houses on the right, these were doctors, lawyers, attorneys in Asheville. Below you, let me ask somebody to silence their cell phones, please. So look at these homes, though. You can tell that we're kind of locked in time here. But this is below these streets are rails. This is the second oldest electric trolley system in the United States, behind Richmond, Virginia. And you folks will not. Newport News, that's not far from you, is it?
Ooh, that's
Virginia. So this was the second oldest trolley system. Of course, it got, but every street is full of beautiful antique houses. You have to be careful if you're from a historic district such as on the East Coast, like Philadelphia or Savannah or Charleston. Don't let me embarrass myself. But as you can see, these houses are quite amazing. So So what is Pebble Dash? Pebble Dash is a construction technique brought here by Richard Sharp Smith, who was an architect at the Biltmore House. That technique involves round pebbles and cement dashed on a building, straight out of the British Isles. So you'll start seeing that on these buildings. But this is one of our best preserved. This is 1899. This house right here. Can you see? Is it made in Great Britain? You'll see homes just like this. It's just a very common style. But this is 1899. Richard Sharp Smith designed it. This Sandra Bullock stayed here with her film crew when she did the movie 28 Days. Remember that movie? It's a recovery movie. But she fell in love with this whole historic neighborhood. On the left is an 1895 home, and this is called the Black Walnut. This is the line in the rose. Excuse me, that's the Black Walnut. You can see that's the original Tiffany window in there. But that Pebble Dash looks so much like stucco, but it's not. And you can see it on this building. So I always like to say there's a nexus between tuberculosis and all of this English architecture, because George Vanderbilt was here in 1885 because his mom had tuberculosis. And the vaccine did not come until 1921 at the earliest. So prior to that time, if you lived in the low country, you literally would suffocate with that horrible disease. Left is a Georgian home. This was our art gallery. But you would literally suffocate because if Tampa on a hot day with 120% humidity, or Atlanta. I'm not picking on the area. Miami is probably much worse than the others. And even so, Atlanta, you probably could make. I like this. I told you Asheville's an eclectic place. Look at this. This is what a New England style right there with the shingle, and then you got this right here. So I don't know where those varieties came from, but nonetheless, we're grateful that they were not taken care of when I was in the growing up here in the 60s and 70s, riding my bikes around these neighborhoods. I never lived in a big house like this, but I lived close. Spent a lot of time here, so. So you're going to see now on the right is a perfect example of the Pebble Dash house. If you could take that house and transport it to a neighborhood in London, it would look exactly like that.
Oh, cool.
Because and Mr. Smith brought that technique here when he was here working for Mr. Vanderbilt. But look at these beautiful homes on the left. You've got these swooping designs. You've got the colonial on the right. But as I said, this wasn't always taken care of like it was now. And I love this home on the left there. Look at that landscape. Is that awesome or what? So this was kind of getting run down, and it was in fact run down in 1987. I want to show you a house. It's a 1900 right carriage house. That rock home on the left there is gorgeous.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But this house right here.
Oh, that's an
Now that's really messing you up. That screen. And can you lift it up or get a picture? I'm sorry. Okay. So anyway, this house in 1987 was called Faded Glory by the neighbors. You can see it's got a tile roof. It's got all the original woodwork. Well, it was so run down. It was a boarding house, and it was built in 1900. That in 1987, this house sold for $18,000. $18,000 would not build that gazebo on the left side, on the right side, the left side of the building there. The new owners put $487,000 in it, and it sold less than 10 years later for $1,520,000. Today, it's probably worth more than that. It's probably in the $2 million range.
Wow.
So once we reach a stopping point, if we're not going to rain, I'll try to raise those blinds. Would that be best?
Yep.
Everybody like that?
Just a little.
Yeah, we sure would.
So if I have anybody handy, we'll do that here shortly. So people would come here to Asheville. It became world renowned. We had sanitariums. We had cool nights, and we weren't too isolated. I guess you get cool nights in Colorado, but we were a long way. New York's a long way. Miami's a long way from Colorado, and This is the highest altitude once you leave Miami or Tampa, etc. So you can see that architecture style again and the big roof. So people would rent a room and they would come up here and sleep on these porches. This was natural air conditioning. I didn't grow up with air conditioning, and of course I didn't know better. But this house on the left, look at the far upper left-hand corner.
That's a really cool.
Yeah, look at that screen. That's got a screen porch on it. See it? That's called a sleeping porch.
Oh, yeah.
And people would literally rent that room and bring their loved one or themselves up where they could breathe the night air. So I can't imagine how difficult that would be not having air conditioning. But up here, you know, you got 62-degree air. Does it ever get that cool in Tampa? Maybe dead of winter?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, July, August, that is not going to happen because I spent a lot of time in the Charleston area. I know how you get anywhere near the oceans, it gets there. So we've done a good job with maintaining these. Like I said, many of these were guest homes. Now there's over 12 bed and breakfasts here, and we're very grateful for that.
The Pebble Bash, is that recreated on these homes?
No, ma'am, that's original. That tells you how durable it is. That was done in before 1929, and much of that was done at the turn of the century, 1900, 1905. Now you'll see some recreated. It's a good question. You'll see some recreated Pebble Dash as we go into Biltmore Village. If you build down there, you have to use that technique. Okay, how handy are you guys? You tall guys or strong guys? If you want to, we'll move that. You'll do these curtains up.
Yeah.
Are you willing to step a little rain if it comes?
Yes.
This is a tough group. I can see that. So I'm not sure how we can socially distance while I climb over, but
No, two.
What's your question?
I was saying if we go to that area.
so who wants the screen up? Just one.
If you want it. You want me to go in? I'm saying.
Are you fine where you are?
Maybe you just slide over here.
In front of you and
And that's
then
just
here.
get to you. I hate to climb all over you.
Bob,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Is that okay? Could we possibly sit over there so we
You
can
certainly can.
have clear vision?
Yeah.
We can?
Yes.
Thank you. Is that all right? Okay. We'll wait till they move and then we'll. We really have a better, clearer vision instead of the.
Oh, okay. So I'll go in there.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Is that window open?
I don't think there's going to be a thunderstorm tomorrow. It's supposed to be a lot.
It's a roll-up.
This is a Gulf storm. It's
Oh,
coming.
that's what he
I
was
think it's kind of odd.
talking about.
Yeah, these are rolled up here.
Cool. That's what I thought the whole thing would
I
be open.
know, that's what I thought you thought, so.
Better
I
off
thought-
here.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Oh, I didn't get what you were talking. I'm like, why were we? I didn't think that over.
Take that
So
off.
you're gonna ask him?
I did ask him.
Yeah, run a trolley in Nashville. This area, as you can tell, we got a good bit of rain.
I just got the one right in the,
Now the middle one came undone, so you know.
Chris, we could lower our windows since we're gonna go over there. That way we don't keep. I got this side. And then just push it. Push it. Charlie tour.
I'll leave a little story out there. I thought I'd be kidnapped out of this park.
My sticker?
I didn't take it, Ted.
Found out my sister should later.
Mine have fallen off.
I went 20, 30 years thinking I got kidnapped. My sister found it passed out and I gave you away. I was 3 years old.
Oh, so that's not where.
Drive in. I don't know.
A lot of people wear those things, but in fact, I initially bought one for Dylan. And then
This is Montford
I
Park.
started freaking out.
Across from us is the Norwood Hospital. This is the forerunner of the Mission Hospital system in Asheville, which is quite excellent.
Yeah, we saw that Mission Hospital yesterday.
We got this one. You want it? Is the other one? We're good? We're good? Okay.
Did you ask him? Yeah, I'll get it on it.
But you need the windows up, or you
That
good?
one.
We
Pardon?
wanted to go over there,
Okay.
if that's possible.
Sorry.
Just for you.
Thank you, Bob.
Just for you.
Can you help with that one?
Jack said he understands. This hospital over here is now apartments. This was World War I and World War II. That'll give you an idea how old it is. It was a recovery center for officers. World War I and World War II. The healing, healing's always been important. You good? Got it. You're a good man, Charlie Brown. Look at us. Is this better? Okay. Well, thank you.
Which seats do you want us in, Bob?
Do you want Chris in the middle
As
one?
long as you're socially.
Okay.
Listen,
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Okay, you're
you.
welcome.
Thank you for your help,
I'm the
sir.
same way. When I take a trip, I want to be in the trip. The Norwood Hospital, like I said, on the right, is Snwp Park.
Oh, I got it. Where am I sitting?
I don't know how to do this.
So straight ahead is the Psychiatric Hospital. I just recently let me out. Actually, it's been closed since you. Is everybody safe?
Sit up here.
Is this
We're
okay?
gonna have to use that one.
Everybody safe?
That's fine. Is that okay?
Yes.
That's okay with
Are
me.
you good?
Everybody good? Yeah. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is the Norwood Hospital. This is the holistic treatment center in Asheville. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So you can see these beautiful old homes.
Much better.
So on the left, if you want a degree in acupuncture, you can go to this building right here on the left and get your degree, and you can actually bill insurance companies. So obviously it's a legitimate thing. It's better than opioids for some. But this is the holistic treatment center. There's also massage and other things. So we're entering a 90-acre campus of our psychiatric and substance abuse treatment centers. It started in around 1900. Dr. Robert Carroll came down from New York. New Yorkers?
Yep.
We were very valuable and very grateful for all the help the New Yorkers gave us to become a better place. But Dr. Carroll came down with his wife in 1900. He built this for her, and she immediately said, I want to go back to New York. I don't like it. So after a year or two, Dr. Carroll married one of his patients. Which that sounds like a ethics violation, but he married a lady named Grace Potter. She was a world-renowned pianist. He built this whole right side for her. If you notice, it's a little different, a little less rust stain.
Yeah.
But Miss Carroll, she did start healing. She gave piano lessons, and one of her students was Nina Simone. Everybody familiar with the name? She was a jazz legend, a early rock and roll pioneer, and a civil rights activist. Look her up. She's hasn't been dead that many years, but she was a wonderful, talented spirit. On the left is the second oldest wooden house in Asheville. It's back to 1892. It's now private residence and sold for about $3 million just recently. But you can see, look at the fireplaces. Everything about that house is gorgeous. And this was the office, administrative office. On the left is the labs for where you can get your drug tests for your job. But this was the psychiatric patients' dormitories. Yours truly used to deliver medicines down here in my little Volkswagen delivery bug in 1967, and the patients used to say, "Pusher, pusher," when I drive them. I was bringing their antipsychotics to them, and their sleepy pills and their happy pills. Okay, on the left is it's one of the original buildings. Obviously, this building on the left is not. It probably came along in the 50s or 60s. So Duke University owned this for 50 years. Anybody know Duke University? Yeah. Most of us do. So, but they've got quite a medical facility. But they were here helping people heal. Now, who knows the most famous resident to be here? This is a hard 1 in 20 get this answer. Okay, I'm going to mention.
Category.
Okay, this. Pardon me.
What category are they from?
Well, let's make a connection here.
Okay.
The Great Gatsby.
Oh.
Who wrote it?
Oh,
Oh, F. Scott Fitzgerald.
What was his wife's name?
Zelda.
Zelda Fitzgerald. Zelda was here. Look, I knew we got a smart group here. I tell you, smarter than the average bear boo boo.
Bob?
Yes.
No, I was just saying,
Thank you.
boo, Bob.
Yeah. So Zelda. Remember the song "Witchy Woman"? She's a restless spirit and an endless night. Don Henley's song. Don Henley read a story of Zelda, and he carried those. He was influenced. The song "Witchy Woman" was influenced by Zelda Fitzgerald. She was a restless spirit. She was a dancer. She was considered the first flapper. She was a painter. She was a writer. F. Scott had actually plagiarized some of her work. She and F. Scott were partiers. She drove herself to madness with a silver spoon, and she used absinthe. Actually, maybe from New Yorker might know what absinthe is.
Absinthe?
Yeah.
The licorice.
I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. He used it's a banned in the United States. Apparently, it's much more potent than our moonshine that we still make somewhere. But anyway, in 1948, Zelda, along with 8 of her other patients, perished. They were on the top floor and a fire broke out. A very tragic loss, but she was all her life, she was being treated for schizophrenia, but they feel today she just had a serious bipolar disease, which, you know, that's pretty common these days with all the stresses and et cetera we go through, but she did perish there. But she and F. Scott like to go back and forth to Europe, partiers, they party hardy, and so who knows much about F. Scott Fitzgerald? He was a character. Zelda was a character. F. Scott, when he wrote the Great Gatsby and Great Gatsby, he was a wild one. He was a serious alcoholic, and but he did stop alcohol. He says, well, he told people, I'm not an alcoholic anymore. I only drink 22 beers a day. And you're true. We had 2 beers, and I'd be on the couch, napping. But F. Scott was quite a character. While Zelda was over here getting insulin shock treatments, electrical shock treatments, ECT, he would go to the Grove Park Inn looking for single ladies, preferably those with money. So he was interesting. But Zelda was not true to her vows. Neither was F. Scott. If you look at their history, so they're quite in. But Zelda was formed on the character Daisy, and Great Gatsby was formed after that. Okay, on the left is the battle, our only battle of the Civil War. Battle of Asheville. The Union forces had won. Richmond had fallen. So they were trying to get home to Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, wherever they could. They were going north because we're going north here behind me. A group of people, old guys, because the young people had been killed. Most of in 1865, or many were, or they were trying to get back and get places like Gettysburg or Vicksburg and all those places where there were just terrible losses. Well, they battled for 4 hours. I think they threw sticks and rocks at each other because there were no casualties. So here's a trivia question of the day. Was this, looking at the map and where we're at, would you think we're a pro-Union or pro-Confederacy? Pardon me? We're well below the Mason-Dixon line.
Right.
But I'll carry that story after we talk about these next 2 things. So be thinking about where we're aligned with Jackson, Mississippi, or Louisville, Kentucky. Okay, on the left, you see this is our Botanical Garden. There was a sycamore sapling in there that went to space in 1971, came back, and now it's a handsome little tree, medium-sized tree. But this is our University of North Carolina, Asheville, and great liberal arts school, 3,500 residents on campus, and one of 17 schools in the University of North Carolina system. Back to the Civil War. Asheville and Buncombe County were in fact Confederate strongholds. However, my ancestors and most of the natives here were Scots and Irish who wanted to live like we did over there, except we were starved to death over there. If you remember, the native family, we had to come here. But we wanted to live on small farms. We wanted to brew our own moonshine, our own whiskey, our own beer, and left alone. We wanted the government to stay away from us. So therefore, the majority of counties surrounding Buncombe County and Asheville were in fact either pro-union or neutral. They just won't be left alone. We didn't have slaves in general. We did not have plantations. We didn't grow cotton. So that's an idea. I bet that's something you probably didn't know. This is a mountain area. If you'll notice, my accent would be entirely different if I were 150, 200 miles south. You know, you hear deep south. My voice, and a lot of the people here, it's a hybrid voice. You may think I'm deep country, but I consider myself having a hybrid voice. I travel overseas and they think I'm from Texas. Everybody thinks I'm from Texas. I guess it's because that's the only state they can guess. But so I always thought that was interesting. Growing up, I was not aligned to the Confederacy in any way. I mean, I just knew it was a battle that happened, and a war that happened, very tragic. But you still got your hardcores though. That happens. Okay, so this is the Drover's Trail. Yeah, is everybody good? Yeah. And East Tennessee is to our left. That's going north. This is the main route to get back and forth. This is called the Drover's Trail, where we would take livestock from East Tennessee, which is more rural than this was, and take it to Grayville, South Carolina for distribution down to Columbia, Atlanta, etc. This is called the Drover's Trail, Buncombe Turnpike, if you will. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but you'll see that on the right is a fantastic place, Southern Pulled Pork Barbecue. Does anybody eat at Llewellyn's or know about it?
Well, we tried to go there last night, but it was packed.
I'm sorry. Well, that's an indication of how good it is.
That's true.
It's actually interesting spices, more so than most southern restaurants. On the left is Norwood Park. This is where the workers at the Grove Park Inn. Is everybody familiar with the Grove Park Inn? Okay. George Vanderbilt's masterpiece. I'm sorry, E.W. Grove's masterpiece. I beg your pardon. This is Llewellyn's Southern Pulled Pork Barbecue. But this was E.W. Grove's masterpiece along with the Grove Arcade. I get Grove, and there again, why these three gentlemen come? Because of tuberculosis, of their love of their mother or their wife. So who's to say COVID may turn out to have a silver lining? I don't know. My life has changed to some degree. I think we all have. Mm-hmm. On the left, there's a traditional arts and crafts style. There are hundreds of these houses in Asheville, all date to the teens and 20s, 1920s. But in 1929, we went into a time warp. We got locked in space. In 1929, our population was 50,000. When I graduated I was born in 1951, our population was 50,000. When I graduated high school in 1969, our population was 50 to 55,000. Today, our population, so we were stuck for from 29 to, let's say 79, 50 years without any population growth. Today, our population is 90,000. That's a 60% growth in 30 years. So we've had some growing pains. But we've learned to take care of our houses and our mountains, and we know that you folks want to come to see those things. Religion is an interesting thing in Asheville. If you know anything about Asheville, we've got Judeo, we've got Judaism, we've got high-level Catholicism, we've got Protestant denominations, and what's the number one in the South? Baptist Church is the leader. So I won't say we're a very religious area. I would say this, that we've got a lot of people in Asheville who are atheists and agnostics, who believe in stars and trees and etc. But that's okay. We don't criticize them. We don't beat them over the head with the Bible. We may throw it at them, but we don't. No, Asheville's a live and let live city. We're very, very tolerant of things like that. So, yes, okay, we're going to make a turn here. Williams Jimmy Bryant. Remember him, the Secretary of State, and he was the prosecuting attorney in the Scopes He died in this house here. He came in 1912 to speak at the Great Park Inn.
He died in that house right
So I'm
there.
going to show you some beautiful old homes. Everyone's different. This is E.W. Grove. In addition to the Grove Park, is that a beautiful house over on the right?
Oh, yes.
Looks like a Hobbit house. Or another beautiful house on the left there. But E.W. Grove was in business with his son-in-law, Fred Seeley, and he owned this whole mountain. And he designed these houses on the left as model homes where you could pick one out and he would build it for you. So look at this style. It's got every style you can imagine. Mediterranean. It's got you got Spanish. You can see a Spanish style house. I think back in Los Angeles or in California. You got a Mediterranean style. We've got every style you can imagine. The gentleman from which part of California?
Southern California.
So okay, does this look familiar?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Does it look like Asheville? Not really, but that's part of our eclectic history. But E.W. Grove designed this, and he had a model neighborhood. You had to have certain agreement that you're going to build a house a certain way, that you're going to have inside plumbing, you're going to have a car. And this is in 1905. On the right's a beautiful view of the Grove Park Inn. So that was he had some interesting rules, but what he's done here is created just a fantastic neighborhood. This is probably our second or third most desirable neighborhood. But it's gorgeous. And every one of these houses, I say, are unique. Who remembers Thomas Wolfe?
Yeah.
He spent some time here in this house with his sister. You know, Thomas Wolfe, Ernest Hemingway said he could have easily been our best author ever. And that includes quite a group, such as Mark Twain, etc. But he died in 1937 of tubercular meningitis, which is tuberculosis of the brain. Terrible, terrible disease. So we'll talk a lot more about him later. But E.W. Grove, he invented the first cold tablet. He invented a common sense nasal douche, which was actually a Dristan Afrin type product. He invented his most famous product. Before I go there, this is for the California and the Florida people. Look at this house on the left. Yeah. When you see the tile, and the copper gutters, yes, they could buy your lunch pretty easy if they wanted to. Okay, so his most famous product was Dr. Grove's Tasteless Chill Tonic. And in the look at the turkey vultures, yeah. No, that's not the vulture. Hold on, that's a turkey. Those are wild turkeys. Look at that. Yeah, that's right. They're pretty. Those wild vultures are not. Yeah, those are wild turkeys. Beautiful.
Oh, I see them.
Very elusive.
They've got the wobble and everything.
They got the wobble. Yeah. Vultures look similar, but no, you're right. Those are the real deal right there.
Dana thinks they're cute.
So Dr. Grove Tasteless Chill Tonic in the 1800s and early 1900s. We had a terrible problem with malaria in this country. And I don't know if you knew the history of that, but it's another bad disease. Well, Dr. Grove invented a tonic that would relieve malaria and its symptoms. In 1900, he invented this product, and it sold at 50 cents a bottle, which is probably $10 today. It sold more products than Coca-Cola did in 1900. And what did Coca-Cola have in it? Coca-Cola had cocaine in it. It had the real deal. Until 1903. Okay, so apparently the products were legitimate because Bristol Myers bought them all. So any of your products over the counter you get, they very likely have a connection with this area through E.W. Grove. On the right is a beautiful French chateau style. It's called Fox and Hounds. This was originally the Swannanoa Hunt Club. It's on the historic register. It's now a clubhouse with a golf course and a special events venue. So what unique? I told a couple of folks here that what's so unique about this is this French chateau style. You could go north of here 10 miles and you would have your share of outhouses and no indoor plumbing. But we didn't know we were poor, or we didn't know we didn't have those things. So Asheville was way ahead of its time. So yours truly had a great time sledding on this golf course. You can imagine. Look, is this not perfect? Look at this. You got hills, and there's no traffic. Well, look here on the other side, hundreds of people would come out here. We do get snow. 1961, I missed one full month of school. Can you imagine? Had to go all summer, but made it there. One of your top spas, you're just seeing the top part. They've got waterfalls and grottos. This is the inn. This is the spa at Norwood Park Inn. My wife and I, for our 50th, that's just one of our little treats. We're going to go to there, and they say it's just, anybody that's been there said it's heaven on earth. Music and nice, starry skies. But most of it's underground. But this is one of the top spas in the United States. I'd say it's in the top 2 or 3. Straight ahead, you're going to on the right side. That's some of the add-on. Great Park Inn started with 150 rooms. Now it's at 512. So it was added on to. So on your left, as we come up through here on the non-COVID, you can still come up here and park. And I would suggest that if you have a day or two, and just park and look out these mountains. It's going to be rainy tomorrow, maybe, but you'll have some views to knock your eyes out. But this is a craft center.
Homespun Museum.
It's a auto museum, and there were looms here that made fabric for Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Car museum.
But you can walk around here. There's a restaurant here. Keep your sticker. If you come back to Asheville in the next few years, you'll be able to get some discounts. Just tell them you were COVIDed out, and Bob says give you a discount. Asheville's Dog City. Look at that. Isn't that great?
It is a dog.
Yeah, we built our boat there. Okay, so this is Grove Park Inn. Who's been to Yellowstone?
I want to go.
Okay, try to go in your lifetime if you can. Just take the tour or whatever. But Yellowstone's in
Wyoming.
It's in Wyoming, and just near right below Montana. E.W. Grove went there in 1910, and he said he loved the inn at Yellowstone. If everybody's heard of Old Faithful,
Right.
well, the inn at Yellowstone sits right behind it. And E.W. Grove fell in love with the design. He said, but it's built out of wooden timbers. So he said, well, I want to build the same thing in Asheville, except I want to build out of stone. So in 1910, he hired 400 men to work 10-hour days for $1 a day, and he built this structure. Poured concrete roof, tile, roof. Some of these stones weigh 10,000 pounds. Can you imagine? In 11 months and 27 days. Those of you who've ever built a house, you can build a pretty simple house that takes that long. And if you're building a big house, you can't get the permits, building permits and environmental impact statements. I'm just married. I want to just for those folks.
Look at the same sticker right there.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
That's great. Okay, so you can walk around here and there's no charge except for the National Gingerbread Competition, which is virtual this year. Don't you hear that term virtual, doesn't it? Anyway, you got this great lobby too. It's got 24-foot ceilings. It's got just a fantastic.
Look at that, honey. Gift shop. They got
Drive back up
postcards.
here if you haven't. From the visitor center, it's less than 15 minutes from the visitor center, and you'll hit these views. Great place to have lunch if they've. You may have to make a reservation. I'm not sure now. Sit on the rocking chair, have a drink,
Tomorrow or Saturday for
and
dinner.
look out there. Or
depending on
have a
if
cup
it's
of
gonna
coffee,
be
and everything will be good. But
Good idea.
This is the newer part right here. Building. It started in the 80s, or actually the 70s. We started expanding it. The Salmons family from Texas. Have any Texas on board? Yeah, but it's a. But this, Harry Houdini. We've had 9 presidents be here. Last with the Obamas. Not a whole lot of view today, but you can see the haze. Really a fantastic. If you got recently sold one of these condominiums sold for $2 million. If you're interested, there's openings.
Just $2 million?
They were $1.2 million, but apparently they recently go. These are the Fitzgerald condominiums. So this. So Asheville, and all of this perhaps started because of somebody's mother had tuberculosis. Just Amazing. Look at this castle on the right. It's got structural problems. It'll eventually, it's owned by the Grove Park Inn, but that looks like something in Scotland, doesn't it? In Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Edinburgh. They straightened me out over there. They said Edinburgh. Bruh. On the left, if you're from New York, you might recognize this building. You got a lot of these around D.C., and you get some of these around Central Park, except they're taller. Look at this apartment. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at that one. Mr. Richard Green. There again, all of this is before 1929. We're going to get a little more modern here, but E.W. Grove wanted a neighborhood.
Oh, yeah, I just saw it.
The roads were gently on the hillside. That's why they're curvy, and he didn't want to hack out the mountain. He wanted to carefully do it. And that's very forward thinking in 1900. On the left is a more modern mountain house. But a lot of the homes you see here were summer homes or mountain escapes for people trying to escape the heat. I must say about 10 days ago there was a big bear, almost a 400-pounder, eating trash in this yard on the left. I came through here day before yesterday. Day before yesterday. And that bear and another one were up there, walking around. Fantastic. As you can see, I think that's a bear fence right there because apparently they're scavengers, and a bear is safe here. Look at this summer home. Can you see yourself on that? That looks like something on Long Island, or Florida. One of the older neighborhoods. Is that a true statement?
Yeah.
Maybe old Hollywood, old California. So, but many of these were summer homes. They were speaking. Again, some of these houses were still run a room in, but most of these were people who from south of here who just did not have air conditioning, of course, so they came up here as a way to breathe. And now, mountain houses, they go up there higher altitude than this, but I love the big old porches and the old style. But E.W. Grove was a very talented and creative person, and we'll go later and we'll see the Grove Arcade. On the right, you're going to see you can just look up these streets, you see some of the houses, they're just amazing up there. But E.W. Grove, in 1905, when you started this, you had to have a car, and think how unbelievable that would be. And you had to have a landscape plan. It's like your neighborhood, doesn't it? A landscape plan. You had to have street parking.
They know Halloween.
Isn't that great? I bet that's who did night. But look at these houses on the left. I love that style. I can just see, and like I say, many of these were built when you still had buggies that would bring people up from the railroad station. They'd come here and stay at these houses. It's just amazing to me. I used to sled down here. I didn't pay any attention to these houses the whole time I lived in Asheville as a boy.
Why would you?
I don't know, this house on the left reminds me of California for some reason. And so this was all brought by E.W. Grove with his founding, his dreams of building a model neighborhood. Okay, so look on the left there. Is that beautiful old Tudor design? But Asheville's Western Carolina, like I say, it's still very rural. Majority's rural. You got this little pocket of. Okay, I mentioned Richard Sharp Smith, who came here from George Vanderbilt to build the Whitmore House. He also designed this church around 1905. Charlton Heston and Grace Kelly worshipped here in the late 40s. It's an Episcopal church now in the Diocese of West North Carolina. Just a beautiful church if you get a chance to drive over. Like I say, Asheville's very easy to drive around. Fred McClellan still designed this little baby park. He was here to do the grounds of the Biltmore House. Of course, he did much of his most famous work, Central Park. And he came to little bitty Asheville. This is the trolley stop here. Now, I've got to show you one of my favorite houses, my top 3 houses. And look at this house on the right. This was the land office for the Grove development, and now it's a preservation society. But look at this house on the right, in this corner. Look at the red door. Look at that. Has anybody seen a more interesting front of a house? That's a Kincaid painting or a Hobbit house from Lord of the Rings. Beautiful. Of course, right across the street, I told you we're eclectic. There's a Greek revival type home. Like I said, many of these side streets. These are some of the newer apartments, of course. But on the left there, this is a ladies' school. tad behind schedule, but we're going to be fine. Okay, on the left is the Banner Hotel. This is old Asheville architecture. This is 1900. Look to your left here. Look at. Can you imagine a buggy, horse and buggy coming through this gate on the left? Can't you just see it? The courtyard at that was filming for the Last of the Mohicans, the scene where they go to Albany. And that movie was filmed all over the area. Chimney Rock Park on the lake I live, Lake James. Chimney Rock Park, I said already. Norwood Park in. This wasn't quite preserved like I think we would try to do it. We would try to do again. That's an old original building, but then that was on the right. Is you see the Pebble Dash?
Yes.
But on the left, if you got to preserve, you got to kind of start early. And some of the houses were falling in, so we didn't really quite get the handle on it. But now I think we pretty well have. Look at this old gas station on the right. Is that great or what?
Yeah.
That's a devil. Okay, ladies. What happened in 1920? This is all you ladies should know this answer. 1920.
Right to vote.
Right to vote. Who got that one? There you go. Smarter than the average bear.
Baba?
There you go. Yes, that's the light. This and the reason I bring this up is look at this yellow house as we go by on the left up here, a little off the road. That's the Patton House. Representatives of Southeast would go to this house and meet prior to going to Seneca Falls, New York. Who's Mythica? I had to expect Mythica. There you go. They would have. They go into Ithaca, and that's where the actual birthplace of the suffrage movement takes place. I think they have a convention there, they ultimately go to Washington. Now, as for me, my wife's always had 51% of the vote in my house, so I don't understand what the voting problem is. I'm going to show you. Has anybody ever seen a Baptist church designed after a Roman Catholic basilica in Italy?
No.
Most people haven't. I haven't. And I love both religions. But look at this on your left. That's Asheville's first Baptist church, and you'll get better views.
That's the
of
one
it.
we see, right?
Yeah, that's so, yes.
So this is Douglas Ellington. You talk a tremendously gifted architect, and Mr. Ellington's work is all over town. But that's one of the masters right there. You're also at the courthouse, which is amazing. Okay, so we're going to a neighborhood that. There again, preservation didn't get here in time, and this was all old neighborhood. Actually, it was falling in when I used to come this way to go to junior high school, and it was falling in. But look at the big old houses on the right up there. See them? This whole area was with them, but even in those days, those were very run down. They were about to be torn down, but we got a handle on it. So that was a great deal. Okay, so we're coming up on the Thomas Wolfe area. Who knows about Thomas Wolfe? Thomas Wolfe, as I said, he could have been one of our very best authors. He still is one of his. This book, Look Homeward, Angels. Do I know what it's about?
Nope.
Okay, that's a hard one. If you want, sometime you want a sleep aid and you got plenty of time, attack that book. It's so detailed and immersive they haven't even made a movie about it that I know of. But it's a story of Asheville. He calls Asheville Altamont, and in that book, it's a scathing revelation of the truth behind Asheville. Any city's got its own corruption, it's got its own hypocrisy, and that's what Thomas Wolfe exposed. He had 200 people, he described them in detail. But he would not use their names for slander, but he would say, well, the mayor who'd been stealing from the city lived in a big gray house on Montford Avenue. He described it just like that. And everybody knew who the mayor was. This is where Thomas was raised with his mom. She was quite a landlord, but she liked to rent houses because we were at Crossroads, originally laid out on the Native American trading routes and the early settlers. Another view of that church, the Basilica Fiore in Florence, Italy. If that's not a mind bender, and you think about that 10 miles from here, like I say, we had pretty simple farmers like my ancestors. They had small farms, and they and actually when that was built, they probably were just getting some education. We'll talk about the Vanderbilts as we go along, but Thomas Wolfe was invited to leave town. His book was banned for 7 years, and people felt like that they were. People felt like that they were. I lost my mask. Anybody see a blue mask? I got another. Big bar here. Somewhere in here. Everybody got a mask these days? Have you noticed have you ever seen the COVID two-step when you get out of your car and you say, "Oh shoot"? You know what they do? You see the people that go, "Woo!" We'll never turn here. All right, get that mask back on, Bob. I got discombobulated moving the blinds up. We good? Okay, so this is, you see Asheville's first skyscraper up here on the right. Straight ahead, excuse me. That's the Jackson building. That looks like my Subaru on the left there. Okay, on the left here is the Visitor Center for the Thomas Wolfe Home, a wonderful artifacts from that era. On the left, Charlton Heston was directing the movie, the play, The Glass Menagerie with his wife Lydia. And of course, you know what happened. He got plucked out by Moses and by God, and God and Cecil B. DeMille said, "You will be Moses," and he was. So that was the site. That's actually that theater is actually called the Heston Theater. Does anybody remember the black and white movie 1957, Thunder Road? Robert Mitchum. It's an art noir, dark, somber movie. He jumps out of one of these balconies up here. It's a story of moonshine running and very tragic consequences. Remember the lyric goes, "The Lord, they never got him, but the devil got him first." And because it's a tragic story. It also is kind of the beginning of NASCAR, because Robert Mitchum had quite a car here. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can get around downtown.
What's that bell on the left?
Okay, this our first skyscraper. It looks like the Hunchback of Notre Dame should be up there. There's no bell up there, so we just figured, well, we'll just put a bell down here and just tell people that that's the bell that should have been up on top of that skyscraper. And the building on the right's, according to Guinness Book of World Records, was the tallest building in the world with no stairs and no elevator. And what happens is that shares with the other building, the Jackson building. That's the West Hall building. Okay, we're going to enter. Let's talk about Mr. Pack, who came down from Cleveland. He was a lumber guy, but Mr. Pack helped install sewer lines. He did close the brothels, the gambling houses, helped us establish a library. He basically helped bring sophistication to our little rural community here. And we're grateful to him. Mr. Pack, there again, another connection with tuberculosis. He might not have come here. But Pack, Grove, and Vanderbilt all came because they loved the area when they visited. And they were so impressed with it, they wanted to live here. And I think that was always a nice tribute to us as a community, that people of that accomplishment would live in little Asheville. But and then it just, when they came, the architects came, and you're going to see a beautiful church up here that was designed by Raphael Guastafino. Mr. Guastafino came because George Vanderbilt wanted him to do the glass work at the Biltmore House. So you never know how things are going to attract. And that is exactly what happened. Okay, so making this turn here, you're going to see this is Pack Square, one of our two city centers. On the left is a monument to our Civil War governor who had slaves. One of the few people who had slaves, and as you can imagine, it's under discussion. On the right is a Heiress Hotel. This is a repurposed BB&T bank building. That bank building was terribly ugly. was here 40 years, but it was rebuilt from the outside in, and they did a masterful job with it. On the left, you'll see our first skyscraper, but Mr. Pack helped pay for half the monument, and he established our church. This is Patton Avenue, named after the folks who were active in the suffrage movement. So remember I was telling you about the turkeys, pigs, and cattle would come out of East Tennessee? Look right here, I love that whoever put these monuments up for them, they're going north, they're going away from South Carolina. So they're leaving, going back to their farms. They're not going to be involved in they don't want to go to market. But this is one of the two centers of Asheville. So I'm going to show you an absolutely beautiful courthouse. It's one of the most beautiful courthouses anywhere, and you'll see this beautiful design by Mr. Douglas Ellington, who also did the Baptist Church. Some of the old original architecture there. It's downtown's pretty healthy right now, even though COVID has taken a beating. We're grateful that you folks have said, I'm not going to sit home forever. So this is the police department designed by an African-American bricklayer and mason, which I think is an incredible story for 1905, that we would do such a thing. On the right is Pack's Tavern. There's a tunnel that goes between here and the police department, and what happened during Prohibition. The whiskey kind of flowed back and forth from the police to the tavern, I think. So you can see this beautiful county courthouse building on the right. The city hall's on the left, which has been done by the same person, Mr. Ellington. It turned out that the county courthouse is described as a beautiful wedding cake, and the city hall is described as the box it came in. So it wasn't exactly a compliment to, I guess it was low bidder. You know how that goes sometimes. Well, those should have had complimentary. Okay, if you look hard to your right, if we passed it, you can see that statue there. That's what the two buildings were supposed to look like. Oh. But it just didn't work out. So we're going to take a left. Who remembers the Memphis Belle B-17 bomber? There you go, several of you do. That bomber was one of the first to come back from Germany. When we were bombing Germany, there was an 80% fatality rate. I mean, we'd send 10 bombers and 2 would come back. Horrible, horrible loss. But Robert Morgan's a native of Asheville, and he flew the Memphis Belle. And there's a movie in 1990 with Matthew Modine, but there's also, so he came here selling war bonds. You remember how they would sell war bonds to finance in 1945? It was a sacrifice for us to put all of our money into the war effort. But he came in 1945 with that bomber, went all around town, made stops, etc. But before he left town, he came right over downtown, halfway as high as that building right there, went right toward the county courthouse and city hall. He couldn't get through because the buildings were too close, his wingspan was too wide, so he killed the bomber at 70 degrees and went through those buildings. People pitched a fit. It had not been announced, and they were just squabbling over. But they called Washington and said, "Oh, he's a war hero. He had permission, but he did not have permission." So my little connection to that story is my mom was a country girl, 16-year-old country girl from just north of here. She was working at the square up there near that monument. The bomber went over, and she says every dish in her little cafe shook, and she remembers that in that rumble of those 4 big engines of that B-17. But that's one of our little urban stories here. On the right, if you walk around, we can't drive up there. I'm going to have to take a little detour. But on the right there is a F.W. Woolworth. It's a great place to visit. There's an art walk in there. This is called Pritchard Park.
There you go, baby.
Pritchard Park. It's also kind of a collection of our homeless folks.
Oh, of course.
Look at this Snwp Cafeteria. If you walk in town, look at this cafeteria. Built by the same gentleman who did the courthouse and others.
Is it closed?
Yes, it is closed. They're currently trying to renovate it. The inside had been changed to Art Deco style. But they're trying to bring it back, but the outside is just a master of Art Deco style. And for you Floridians, that would be something you would see in Old Tampa or Old Miami.
#1 hot seat.
So, great restaurants. I think we just passed Tupelo Honey, which is one of our famous ones.
What's that specialty there?
It's a variety of southern foods.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not what you'd. And there's a number of barbecue places. I mentioned Luella's. There's another barbecue place here. I can't remember the name, but the visitor center has a great. Let's see if I can get by here. I'm in my DOT test when I get in tight quarters. I'll panic. Not. Okay, so you can see some of the original.
Piercings, baby.
In
The hookah hookah.
1975, every one of these buildings was covered. Because you know what happened in the 70s? Here comes the malls. Is hemp's legitimate? Does anybody believe in that? CBD, anybody believe in that? Is it legitimate? Okay, I had my brother recommended it.
Yeah, my sister does.
Okay, well that's, is it going with THC in it? No. I think hemp doesn't, but I can't believe Asheville hasn't passed the local law authorizing marijuana, but it hasn't. Okay, look at this gas station on the right. This was in 1915, was a 4-car garage. Now it's a jewelry store. Isn't that great?
Oh, I'll go there.
You had to say that, didn't you, Bob?
And oh, somebody flashing?
Huh?
Look at this up here on the building. It says, "Love is not canceled." Isn't that great? And you guys have shown the love by coming out today, and I'm thankful. Okay, there's our federal building, and we'll talk about the weather records here in a little bit. We'll talk about Asheville, New York. She wants to know the weather in 1866. I can tell her out of that building. Okay, this is the Grove Arcade. Has anybody been in it?
Yes.
Good. Is it beautiful?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, okay. I would suggest just park and just walk in there for just a few minutes. It's a beautiful building. And on the right side, if you could look all the way up, you see some faces in that border. Can you see it at the very top? Those are people who welched on their debts with Mr. Grove. And rather than put your check in the... Look at that nice dog. My dog was back. Look at that. With Mr. Grove, you put your face in immortality up there. That's pretty unique, isn't it? But Mr. Grove, he was in this hotel up here in 1927, and honestly, having built the Grove Park Inn, developed that beautiful neighborhood, and built this, he died of the hiccups.
Oh my
The
God.
hiccup.
Can you imagine? It was a lifelong problem for him, and so Mr. Grove, you dog lovers, look to the left, get a dog store.
A dog.
That's actually considered one of our names is the Dog City. Okay, look at the right there. You can see those beautiful concrete work in there. In 1942, the government took that building and blocked it up and made it a safe haven for government offices and national treasures, like out of Washington and New York. There were fears it would be bombed. Okay, so now we're going to go to Barcelona, Spain. Everybody ready?
Yep.
I told you we're a unique place, and I told you that tuberculosis meant a lot to us, both negative and positive, because this church right here was built by Mr. Rafael Bostafino, who came here because of George Vanderbilt. He loved Asheville, but this church is gorgeous. 1906, and Mr. Bostafino died before it was finished. It's got the largest unsupported glass dome of any church in the country. It's got copper cladding, but beautiful church. You'd have to call. I'd say they're under COVID restrictions. So, aren't we all tired of hearing COVID restrictions?
Yes.
Yes, we are. Yours truly is too. But there's a lot of mystery still with this disease. So, you know, I'm going with the professionals. I can't make no objections. So. Okay, so now we're going to head down toward our river district. Try to pick up a little speed. I'm a little bit behind, but we're good. So this is our. Is everybody good temperature-wise?
Yeah.
And air-wise? Good. Now we're back where we started almost. These mountains around here is something. So as you can see, we have no level ground. I say that as we're on level ground, but in 19 1916, is everybody familiar with what happened to Pensacola here recently? Beautiful little city on the panhandle of Florida. They had 30 inches of rain in places right off the coast. Well, picture this. In 1916, we had 34 inches of rain in 4 days. Pensacola was devastating, but at least they have the Gulf of Mexico and the bays and rivers down there on the Gulf. We don't have that. And in 1916, those waters came. We had 2 hurricanes. One came from the Gulf, one came from the Atlantic, and it dumped on there. And picture that water running downhill here. It ran down here till it got to our industrial area, which is where we had just about all of our manufacturing, because it was built on the river where you could generate your own power. It was so severe, it took out all of the industry. We learned our lesson. But we'll talk about that as we go. But look at this house on the right. That's my favorite Victorian house here in town. And I'm thankful that we saved it, because we didn't save a lot of houses here. 1894. Those of you who have ever worked with wood, can you imagine that? There weren't a whole lot of power tools in 1894, if any, except maybe a steam-powered. Isn't that beautiful? Does old Tampa have some houses like that? That's what I'm thinking. To some of the old. I'm going to start. When my wife and I travel, we're going to start looking for the old historic districts, because we always end up, at the beaches or in the the fast areas. But I'm going to start looking for these. The same African American bricklayer who did he built that church on the right. There's a fresco in there based on the Beatitudes. Worth seeing. We're back on Patton Avenue. We made a circle. So that flood was just totally devastating us. So we learned our lesson in 1916. After 1916, we built all of our factories up on high ground or surrounding areas. There was a few that were stayed down here, including the textile plant that was actually open when I started working in '71. So from the around 1920 up into about 1970s, that became a warehouse district. Has anybody got their problems with homelessness?
Yes, every town. Yeah.
Every town. I was in Los Angeles, old Hollywood. You'll appreciate this. It was one of the horrifying to me. It was horrifying to me. We went through the old. I don't know where we were going, but we went through old Hollywood, and it was quite shocking to me. I understand New York's got the issue. We've got it. We're trying to. There's no magic bullet, obviously, for it. So it became a warehouse district. Well, eventually the warehouses kind of faded out in the 70s. And the warehouses were falling in disrepair. Well, along about in the 80s, Asheville started having a rebirth in its tourism and visitation, like folks like you were coming. Well, the artists uptown were selling more, but also they started raising the rents. And the rents got to the point where people couldn't make any money. So the artist approached the people in this warehouse district down here and says, can we come down here and rent these old buildings? And they said, sure. So they moved from downtown and moved their studios, and they came down here. This is a place, at times this is a pretty rough looking place. But you're going to see, and most of this graffiti you see is actually invited, because we found a few people get pent up and they want to mark your churches, mark your banks. Down here we said, well, let's just invite them to come down here with a permit, no vulgarity, no pornography or hate speech, and let's let them come down here and do that. This is not part of it right here. This will eventually be a park and art walk, etc. I hope that train clears. If not, we'll just make a little detour. But Jonas Gerard down here has a piece of work that's in the Smithsonian. You've got some very renowned artists. I'm not an art aficionado, but that's a big word for a country boy, isn't it? Aficionado, did you hear that? Did you hear that? I told you we were educated here. So
Somebody bought a book.
but look at this beautiful, bright colors he uses. And Gerald R. Ford, President Gerald R. Ford. So we're grateful. But this is just one of many. If you're interested in art, you can see anything you want to see. Glass blowing, copper, any craft you can think of. How about Asheville? Look at this. Can you believe we've got a traffic circle? We've got a traffic circle. I always tell people, I can handle this. I somehow got on a 3-lane traffic circle in Auckland, New Zealand, driving the wrong way. You know how the traffic, how it goes down there. It was one of the hard, my wife and I, we both had a triple heart attacks. Do this so I'll keep my license. So it was a hoot, but we got where we were going. But I think people saw that rental car and they says, uh-oh, American. Because anybody who drives on the right side, they're a public danger if they go to England or Scotland, or if you go down to New Zealand, Australia. But it was it's easy to drive on the back roads. You can stay to the left, but it's not so easy in the cities. Okay, so we're going to make a quick loop. Diagonally across is the new Belgian Brewery, $175 million investment. They morphed out of Colorado, Fort Collins. Okay, what's the name of this river over here? Who's been studying their maps? I won't hold it against you. This is the French Broad. It's named French. It's not a derogatory term for a lady from France. The French Broad is because that water flows into Tennessee, and Tennessee at the time was French territory. How long did it stay French territory until what happened?
No idea.
It's your history now. Go back.
Louisiana Purchase.
U.S. history. Louisiana Purchase. Who said that? Smart guy. Hey, when we get a little gray on us, you got to pay attention to this gray-haired guys. That's exactly what Louisiana Purchase. That would become American territory and eventually the state of Tennessee. But this is the third oldest river in the world. The oldest river is the Nile, which is probably a pretty easy answer. The second oldest is the New River in North Carolina, flows into Virginia. And Norfolk folks may know that one. However, what's significant about those rivers and the Johns River in Florida, that's the one that gives you away. What's significant about those big rivers? They all flow north, which is unusual, I think, because most of the rivers in the United States flow south or east or west. But eventually, this water goes to the Gulf of Mexico. 20 miles from here, down toward where I live, that water's going to the Atlantic Ocean. Because it's a function of the Continental Divide. Great place to come just park and walk, see tons of artists right in here. Okay, so let's look at this graffiti. Some of it is it's an acquired taste, but you can see somebody went to a lot of work to do this.
Yeah, look at that one.
Look at that. Okay, barbecue. On the right is the Summit Coffee House, great place. On the left is one of the top barbecue places in the country by contest. The Obama's been here twice. He got off he and President Obama and Michelle got off the plane and immediately came down here. And this barbecue is fantastic. You can get your barbecue here. There's also a craft brewery right beside it. But look at some of this work. Okay, look at this graffiti on the right. I'd say it's graphic art. I won't call
Come
it.
here and eat outside.
Yeah, this group that did this red and white with the strange faces is actually from San Francisco.
What's the name of the barbecue place?
12 Bones.
12 Bones.
Yeah, and you have to get there before 4 o'clock. It's got strange hours, Monday through Friday, 11 to 4 or 4:30. Look at that one on the right side. How do you do that with a spray can?
That's cool.
So this is called the Foundry Way. There's a great place to get craft beer.
Where?
But as you can see, would we rather have this? Would we rather have this down here or have it on our downtown church? The answer's obvious. So we invited people to come down here and go for it. And it's just a unique approach.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
But look, everywhere you look, you just have to walk and kind of look at it. Big lady on the right there, she looks comfortable, doesn't she? Okay, look at the lion on this up front here on the upper right.
This
Yeah.
is cool.
Yeah. Is this amazing or what?
Oh, it's cool.
All done with a spray can. This African American man on the right here. So this was all. Yeah, that's a mind bender right there on the left there. But there you go. I wonder if these what kind of chemicals these people got. Did you see that?
Love the shirt.
He's got his FUC T-shirt. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Look at the African American girl on the left there. Isn't that precious? That's Joy. Somebody said that's a young Nina Simone. But I want everybody, your assignment today, should you choose to accept it, is to look up Nina Simone. Look at the little toys on the right. How do they do this? I just don't know. Of course, then you got Zombie Apocalypse right beside it. There again, this style over here is a group from San Francisco. They came through the area. They heard about Asheville's foundation wall. We were getting ready to paint all these walls gray when the artists moved in, and just say. Then we say, wait a minute, that don't make any sense. This isn't just vulgarity. This is something. Okay, guys. Who remembers it? What's the name of this character with the bug eyes? I know a guy who knows this.
Cat Beauty and Devil?
Rat, listen to that lady. Woohoo! Good for you. That's Rat Fink. 1964. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
And I love that he's riding on a spray can. That's Rat Fink. That's impressive. You haven't said Rat Fink in 30, 40 years, have you?
No, sir. I mean, yes, I have.
You have?
Sorry.
That's impressive.
I have to check and see, but I think some of my friends were here doing this work.
Fantastic. Yay.
Yeah.
Well, we're grateful.
I am glad to be down here looking at
There
it.
you go. So, drive and park, no charge, and just love it. On the left, if you have a skateboard, 15-year-old running over old people like me on the sidewalk, you said, please come down here and use our skate park. And they do. You don't have a whole lot of skateboard problems or graffiti problems in Asheville. There's a little bit, but I'd say not much. I'm not sure that one on the far right, but she's kind of, that's a spooky one, isn't it?
Great Slick.
Yeah, it looks like Grace Slick, doesn't it? Good call. This is some of our recent work. So this lady back here's got connections to graphic artists. It's great.
How do you make sure nobody graffitis over your graffiti?
Well, you have to have a permit.
That's what I'm asking.
You're permanently barred from being down here. You have to go through the organization, the foundation wall, and they will show you what's available. And I'd say if it's starting to fall in, my favorite, look at the young girl on the right. See that with her dandelion? I love that. So the French Broad on my right, third oldest river in the world documented. Our mountains used to be as high as the Himalayas. If you'll notice how benign and smooth they are, maybe you folks from Oregon, since you had Mount Hood and all those volcanic mountains, we're quite a difference. If you go to the Cascades, there's quite a difference between us and the Sierras. Quite a bit of those versus our mountains. But we're ancient mountains, smoothed off. But this river, when I was growing up, it was told that it was too thick to drink and too thin to plow.
Is there any fish in it?
The catfish, ma'am, were so desperate to be caught and relieved of the pollution, they wanted to be caught. Yes, today you've got catfish, suckers, a few bass. It's not cold enough for trout, but you go northern and it is. But yes, ma'am, there are some fish now, and it's a miraculous change. In a hot summer day, you come out here and you'll see dozens of kayakers and tubers out here, and it's really quite an amazing place. Which used to be I won't call it an open sewer, but it was pretty much a dumping ground. But it made great progress. So actually we're joining now, as you can't see, the French Broad is flowing from the south near Brevard, North Carolina. The Shenandoah River is flowing from Black Mountain, North Carolina. You know, I use my hands so much, if I broke my arm, I'd have a speech impediment. You notice that? Anyway, so the French Broad, the Shenandoah is beautiful river in Native American language. The Belmore House and Estate. Mr. Vanderbilt He looked at these mountains when he brought his mom here in 1885, and he looked all the way to Mount Pisgah, which may not be visible today. He says, I want to buy this land as much as I can. So he bought 125,000 acres, which became the part of the Billboard estate. Today, the estate right across this river, through these bushes, is the river, trust me. And the farmland, see the distance. If you go to the Grove Park Inn and you have a meal there, most of that food comes off the farm, and that was George Vanderbilt's original. But it's now 8,000 acres. When Mr. Vanderbilt died, Edith agreed to sell 80,000 acres to the U.S. government, and it became the first national forest. It also, we're very pleased with this. We're considered cradle of forestry. So any Seminole National Forest or whatever in Oregon, in Florida, or wherever you live, it's got the preservation of those national forests originated in Asheville with cradle of forestry. And George Vanderbilt started that. He brought in foresters when he bought all that acreage. He brought in foresters from Europe and other places. There again, I talked about that nexus between heaven for me, that it may have happened, maybe not, but it came here because of tuberculosis. Have I made my point on tuberculosis? Do I need to quit talking about it? But it's such a curious connection. So right across the way, behind that train, there's the Snwp River. But does anybody know how George Vanderbilt got his money? Indirectly. His grandfather, that's indirectly. His grandfather was Cornelius Vanderbilt, as in Vanderbilt University. I know you folks there from Franklin, Tennessee know where that's at.
Yep.
So that was Commodore. Commodore had 9 sons, and one of those was William. But Commodore had the Staten Island Ferry for you New Yorkers. Ithaca's not exactly New York City, is it? You had the Long Island Ferry, you had the Long Island Railroad, and you had steamships, as that gentleman mentioned. Steamships going back and forth to Europe. He was the Jeff Bezos of his day, Cornelius was, and William took over that business, and he actually was even more successful than his grandfather. Well, William's son was George Vanderbilt. He did not want anything to do with railroads. He did not want anything to do with shipping. He wanted to have a farm in North Carolina. Does that sound weird or what? So he built this 250-room home over here as a bachelor, in addition to all that land. But ultimately, it became this dream. But he did inherit $1 million when Cornelius died, and then $5 million, I think when he turned 21, and later there was another $5 million in trust. So that $11 million is what he used for the basis for the Belmont House. Sometime in your lifetime, if you could go there, and I know today we're under time conditions and all that. We have 10,000, sometimes 10,000 people a day go through there. I doubt if we got 1,000 people a day. But this is the entrance right here on the right. But Mr. Vanderbilt was just a tremendously interesting person. Okay, we're in Biltmore Village now. The lady asked, is that recreated Pebble Dash? That's original, but you're going to see a recreated. Look at this Ruth's Chris up here. That has recreated Pebble Dash. Look to that beautiful church on the left. Has anybody been to Biltmore Village? No. Come and just park and walk around. That's 1896. Mr. Vanderbilt was a very religious person. And he built this church here as the second building after his home was built. But that is gorgeous. It's a Norman design. 1896 was consecrated. It's with the Episcopal Church of the Diocese of West North Carolina, of which yours is a member. Straight ahead is our wealthiest neighborhood, and we recently sold a house that we could go for $7.7 million. million. That's a lot for the country here. But in all retrospect, these are these are descendants of many of them from the Biltmore estate, Biltmore family. Gorgeous houses, it's public roads, you can drive around. And Andy McDowell, the actress, had a place here, I guess. I think she's really from Spartanburg, South Carolina. I think she did sell her house here. But you just see a lot of people. I know Steve Martin spends a lot of time in this area because he's a bluegrass player. We're a bluegrass place. But nonetheless, George inherited the money and did great good. He helped the farmers organize. And I've got a connection to Mrs. Vanderbilt. You say, now wait a minute, Bob, you can't have a connection with that kind of wealth. Well, along with many ladies from New York, they came down to this area, and right off the bat, I told you we're Scots, Irish, we're kind of country folk, rural folk, and not necessarily educated, not necessarily well fed, not necessarily well taken care of. So my connection with Mrs. Vanderbilt was, in 1900, she